Guys, thank you so much for joining me today. I got Dr. Michael Collier, an incredible man. He's someone that I work with to help build his business, and he's a police officer. He's a dad. He's a business owner, and he's just an all-around good guy. So,
Thanks,
Mike,
man.
thank you for being here, man.
Oh, thanks for having me. I'm very honored to be asked.
Yeah, and how many kids do you have? What are their names?
I've got two kids, Ava and Xander. My son Xander is 17 and my daughter Ava is 15. So two teenagers. Yeah, never a dull
And
one.
yeah, well, I'm curious, like, what is your happiest memory so far of being a dad?
Oh man, I mean, there's so many. They're getting older now, so we're just constantly creating new memories. But I always think back to when they were little, or you'll see pictures, and God, it seems like so long ago, but the kids grow up so fast. It's just unbelievable, especially since it seems like we spent a lot of time like when they were like babies up until like 6 years old, and then right after that, next thing you know, they're like teenagers and they're driving. So it's just a whirlwind, man. So fast, so fast.
And it's so interesting, like your experience again, like with everything going on as a police officer, also raising teenagers. You're in
Yeah,
Michigan.
yeah.
Like, what has that experience been like for you? Like, what has the past 2 years been like for you as a dad?
Yeah, it's been really interesting, especially with my kids being teenagers. So they're getting to be more socially conscious. I mean, they've always known I'm a police officer, but perfect story or good story. And one of the challenges of being a parent is, as a police officer, when the George Floyd thing happened, my
Mhm.
daughter was 14 at the time, and like I said, just starting to be socially conscious. I was really obviously I have an interest in it being an officer. So I was watching the news like nonstop when that was going on and all the rioting, just watching the news for 2 days straight, 2 or 3 days straight. And she was sitting right next to me the entire time, which was probably a mistake. I probably should have shielded her a little bit more from that. My son had no idea what was going on, just a typical teenage boy, just oblivious. Um, but she was very aware of it, everything that was going on. And we'd talk about it. And then I remember going back to work, and it was such a crazy time at work, just unbelievable. But I go back to work one day. My wife works too. So she was at work. My wife's a teacher, and the kids were home for something and didn't have school, or I think it was after school. And my wife calls me and says, "Your daughter is at the end of our driveway with a sign, with a BLM sign."
Mhm.
So I'm like, okay. So she's like, okay, what do we do? We're working together as a team to raise these kids. So what do we do? So I'm thinking, okay. So my first instinct is like, no, she needs to go back in the house. But then I remember like when I was growing up, whenever my parents told me no, that I can't do something, it made me want to do it more. So I didn't want to do that. Plus I also, when you're raising kids, you want them to develop their own personalities, they have their own views and all that stuff, and you have to respect that. It's not just, you're not just spitting out whatever you believe onto them.
Mhm.
So there's that whole part of it too. So we talked about it, we let her express herself at the end of the driveway, do that. And then that lasted about 10 minutes, and then the more I thought about it, I'm just thinking, I respect her right to express herself. She can have her views. That's totally fine. But she's a 14-year-old girl. She's by herself. She's at the end of our driveway, which, as a police officer, like you're always thinking about like, safety and prevention. So, the conversation I had to have with her is that, I get it. I appreciate that you feel strongly about this, that you have opinions and beliefs, but you're all by yourself. Your mom and dad aren't home. So, and people feel very strongly about this, obviously. So if somebody was to stop their car and confront you, what are you going to do?
Mhm.
It's a safety issue. Um, and then you're at the end of our driveway. So you're painting a target, on our house, basically. So we told her to go inside, but that was one of those parenting moments where you're like, oh man, like, they don't, this isn't in the book somewhere. You got to
Yeah.
figure this out. Um, and everything's been fine. I mean, we got through that situation and it was good. And I think she appreciated the fact that we respect her beliefs and opinions. And so it was a good learning experience. I made sure to, or we made sure to make sure that she educates herself, and listens to both sides of the story all the time, and comes up with her own decisions instead of someone, or her opinion instead of someone just giving it to her.
Hmm.
So it was a great learning experience. And I mean, like, you talk about like a parenting challenge. I mean, that was a huge one for us.
Yeah, and it's like that dance. You're in two worlds.
Yeah,
You're a police officer. You're a dad.
right.
What do you do here? And I'm curious. You know, you hinted at it too. Like, look, everything's been pretty good, but how was it like even right after that? Like, hey, she went inside. Like, what happened right after that?
So we were trying to educate her a little bit on everything. And then I think that she still like feels a certain way about it. Um,
Hmm.
but she just kind of keeps her opinions to herself a little bit more now. So there hasn't been any like protesting or anything going on since then.
Uh-huh.
Um, I mean, she definitely has thoughts about it. But she just kind of keeps them more to herself now.
Mm.
So yeah. So it's not perfect, but it's always a work in progress.
Yeah, and I think the beauty of it too is just seeing the intention, but also like, look, like you have your views. You
Right.
like it's almost like kind of giving them that ownership. Like, look, you're my kid, but eventually, like
Yeah.
you're gonna be out of this. Like you're gonna be on. Like this, you're gonna be you,
Yeah.
100%.
Yep.
And
Yep.
here's an
Absolutely.
opportunity to be you,
Yeah.
while also doing it in a way that keeps us safe, but also keeps us united too.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And my son's the same way. I mean, he's 17. He's in that stage, where you're a teenage boy and you're trying to figure out like what your identity is and all that stuff. And
Yeah.
and it's interesting to see him finding his way in doing that. And when you are a dad, and he's our oldest, so our first kid was our son. So when you're growing up as a boy and stuff, and you're thinking, okay, I'm gonna have a son someday, and then when it happens, like you've got all these, I don't know, I'm sure every other dad feels this way, but you've got all these like preconceived notions about what it's going to be like, and how he's
Mm.
going to be, how you want to raise him. And I would think that probably a lot of people would just want like a mini version of themselves. They always see themselves in especially their dads and their sons.
Hmm.
um, but we're just not like that. It's crazy that we're not total opposites, but some of the things that I was interested in growing up, like he has no interest in. Like I've always been into fitness and training and working out, and he has no interest in that whatsoever. He's a musician, so just total opposite end of the spectrum, which is totally fine. And yeah, I mean, he is his own person, and I love him for it. And it's exciting to see that. And it actually forces me to grow as a person and be more, broaden my horizons a little bit and be more accepting and experience new things.
Was there ever a time where you were like, like, no, Xander, like,
Tanner.
come to the gym. We're gonna work out. We're gonna like almost like forcing him to do the things that you wanted to do. Not just because you thought it was best for him, but it's also like, hey, I'm trying to bond with you. Like, was there ever a moment like that? Even like maybe it wasn't working out,
Yeah.
but anything like throughout his life.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll tell you another story. Um, so I like camping, I like hiking, I like being outdoors. That's just
Mhm.
not really his thing. Like we'll do it as a family. We go on hikes, all the time. Well, I wanted to go on like a real hike and go camping, take a couple days. And I think he was 10 or 11 at the time. And so I go out, I get him all the gear, buy him a backpack, all this stuff. I'm all excited. And he was okay with it. He wasn't as pumped as I was. So then we go, and I was trying to force this adventure on him like so much, and he just didn't like it. He just didn't like hiking. And it went through a whole range of emotions. We're on this trail, and I start off being all supportive, because he's lagging behind and going slow, and just not having a good time. And so I went through the whole range of, trying to be the supportive dad, and then that wasn't really working. So then being like the threatening dad, which also didn't work, and just going like a roller coaster, man.
Hmm.
And just trying to force the issue because I had that idea of what I wanted, this father and son camping trip to be, and
Hmm.
he just didn't have the same idea, which is totally fine. But I tried to force it, and we never went again. I mean, that was it. He still refers to it as, he's like, I'll never hike like that again. And we laugh about it now, but I kind of screwed that one up, as a dad, like looking back on it, like I shouldn't have pushed too hard. Um,
Hmm.
yeah. And then as far as like working out, I've never like forced him to work out or anything like that. There was a time when he expressed an interest in doing that. And I, of course, like, encourage that as much as possible and bring him to the gym. But then when he lost interest in that or doesn't feel like doing it, I'm not going to force him. But then I find out little things because he is a 17-year-old boy. So he's feeling like, he wants to be strong and look a certain way. So then I find out that he's like secretly doing like push-ups and sit-ups in his room, that I don't
Nice.
know about, which makes me super happy, that he, has an interest.
Yeah.
Yeah. So just things like that.
So when was that trip? And when did you realize, like, you know what, I'm not going to be forcing my kids to especially my son, to be
Yeah.
doing things that I want to be doing? When was
Yeah.
that?
That was he's 17 now. So that was probably about 5, 6 years ago when that
Okay.
happened. Yeah. And we haven't gone since.
What has
So
been your approach now with regard to, like, all right, this, like, he doesn't like doing this. What am I going to do to
yeah.
connect with?
So now it is, I just take more of an interest in what he's interested in. I kind of let him take the lead a lot of times. And that's kind of goes back to what I was saying about it. It opens me up to new experiences. He's a musician, so he's, in the band and doing all that stuff and loves
Mm,
it, absolutely loves it. And I never went to band competitions. And I don't know anything about that, but I'm going to be supportive. So I'll let him kind of take the lead and then just, show an interest in what he wants to do. So, I
so
mean,
what's an example of that? Because I'm very curious, because I'm like, hey, I love sci-fi movies. I love comics. Like, why don't you read it with me? And
yeah,
I've done that with some family members who are like little cousins and stuff. And I'm like, I just haven't gotten to that. And I'm like, all right, I want to be dad. What are you
yeah,
doing?
yeah, yeah. You just want, so like reading. So, same thing, like or movies, like I like certain movies and he, doesn't or whatever. So I'll watch what he's doing. I'm not going to force it. So there's a fine line because then there is such a thing as I want him to also try new things and experience new things and broaden his horizons. Okay. I mean, he
Mhm.
still eats like a 5-year-old, like mac and cheese and hamburgers. So there's that, there's part of the responsibility of being a parent and trying to get them to step out of their comfort zone and learn new things.
Mhm.
So there's that. So I'll introduce stuff like that. But if I see that he's just not into it, I'm not going to force the issue, because
Okay.
it's just not going to it's not going to end well, if you make somebody do it.
Yeah.
It's a lot easier. I'm the adult, I'm the parent, I can suck it up and sit through maybe a movie that I'm not liking because I'm getting to spend time with them. At the end of the day, we're spending time together, you know, and I'm just happy doing that.
Oh, okay. With the musician stuff, like, I guess, what's an example of you, like, all right, like, you take the lead and I'm going to do it.
Yeah, so he's a percussionist, so he's a drummer. So he's got competitions, stuff like that. He's like talking about it constantly, and I don't know anything about that stuff. I really don't. But I learn. I ask questions. I show interest. I show up for him. I try to engage with him with stuff like that, because I know he's excited about it. So then that kind of leads into other things. It kind of opens the door for me to have other conversations with him, when maybe it's something that he's not excited about, you know
Mm,
but we establish that communication.
nice. And
Yeah.
a question that came to mind too is, that time that you're getting to spend it together, and all the dads that I've spoken to, like, the common thing everyone said across the board that is so important for them that they would either change or have more of, or do the same again, is time with their kids.
Yeah. Yeah.
the interesting thing about your experiences, look, you're a cop. You're also running it, like
Yeah.
you and I met starting a business
Yeah.
and raising two kids.
Yeah.
You know, you've got a lot of time that you're putting into these other ventures, but where, like, how are you putting time in, like with the kids? Like, how are you balancing that like that?
Yeah. So I try to get it in whenever I can. It's just, and we've had these discussions, but it's just like working out. If it's important to you, you'll make it a priority.
Mm,
I'm not gonna find time to spend time with the family. I'm gonna make time for it. So just like anything, like just like I would schedule a meeting, I'll schedule time, with the family. Because if you don't, then a lot of times, like, it's easy just to, pass that time up. Um, and it's, being a police officer, and especially like, the things that I do, because I've done like SWAT, I've done all that stuff. So, and just the nature of the job, like you can have every intention to spend, an evening with the family or with your son, and then you got to go on a SWAT call, and you don't have any control over that. So you've got to take every opportunity that you can. And I'm making up for stuff, because I was like I've always been like a worker. So I've always been the guy that never says no to work, that always works the overtime, that always shows up for stuff. Um, but you've got to say no sometimes. And the thing that I learned um, from somebody years ago is that every time you say yes to work, you're saying no to your family.
mm.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, it makes total sense.
Yeah.
Because yeah, I know that's something that I've done in the past. For me, it's different because before I was married, I was just single, no kids. So it's
Yeah.
like it's
Yeah.
different,
Right.
I guess. But it's like, again, how you do anything is how you do everything. So
Yeah.
that's going to carry over. So to me, the beauty of like listening to men like you is like, okay, how can I introduce more of that practice into my life now
Yeah.
so that that doesn't continue?
Yeah.
And well, if we were to go back in time, what would you do the same as a dad?
What would I do the same? Ooh, I didn't expect that. I thought you were gonna ask me what I do different. I had a whole list of things like that. um, Man, I would just do the same things that I do now. I mean, when I engage with the kids, I try to make the most of our time, and I've always been like that. Another thing, like being, and it sounds horrible, but another thing, being a police officer, like I don't take, whether it's my son, my daughter, my wife, any of my family or friends, I don't take anything for granted, because I realize that, like, the work that I do, I'm strapping on a bulletproof vest every day. Like there's no guarantee that I'm going to come home, you
Mm,
know? So every day when I leave, like I kiss everybody goodbye, like, like the off chance that I might not come back, which is horrible. But when you think of it that way and you live your life like that, then you're going to be more engaging. And there's been times, of course, where I lose sight of that, just because of everything that's going on, and you forget how important that is. But if you live your life like that, it's so rewarding. I mean, you're just gonna have so much gratitude for the time that you have with all your loved ones, and you're just gonna show up for them, a lot more, and just not take any of that time for granted that you have.
do you find yourself oftentimes like kind of like daydreaming, like, oh man, I wish things were like this, or what if it was this way? Or are you more like, I'm here in the moment?
Yeah, no, I don't do a lot of, I mean, I have goals, obviously, because I think I'm a very goal-oriented person. But no, I mean, I would rather, instead of sitting around like dreaming about what I want to do, I'd rather be like taking action to make those things happen.
Mm.
Um, yeah, I don't spend a lot of time just sitting around thinking about thinking about what if.
Yeah, I had the inclination of that just after what you mentioned, because I think
Yeah,
there's a big thing, and this is for anyone, not dads, like this is for anybody in any walk of life, is like it's very easy for us to think like, oh, what if? What if I
right.
could have done this differently?
Yeah,
Or why am I here? I could be doing this. And just kind of almost thinking like in a state of regret. And but what that does is it robs you of the present, it robs you of being here.
right.
And it's kind of like that thing, like that's why we're on the phones, like during dinner time, or
Yeah, no,
when it's just you and your girl and you're both on your phones. Like it's taking
yeah,
that for granted. And I think there's a power in what you do, like like, yeah, the occupation of being a police officer has almost kind of like not forced, but I guess like entice the idea of like, hey, like, let me be grateful, let me be present. I think
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
a beautiful gift for, all of us, especially parents,
Yeah.
to foster.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. There's no guarantees that you're going to be around forever. There's
Yeah.
there really isn't. So you got to make use of the
Well, there's
time.
no guarantee you're going to be around
No,
forever.
no,
Yeah,
not at all. So you got to make use of the time.
I love that. And
Yeah.
growing up, what is something that your dad or your mom, your parents did that you're doing with your kids?
So actually, so I'll reframe that. It's actually things that my parents didn't do that make me the way that I am right now. Okay. And it's not, and I'm not going to bash on my parents, but my dad worked for General Motors. So he worked in a factory,
Hmm.
um, his entire career. And he worked afternoons for a while, then he was on days, but he was not engaged with us at all. He'd work all day long, come home,
Mm.
take a nap, dinner time, and then watch TV and then off to bed. And it was like that. I mean, that's just the way it was. And I get it. It's it's kind of a long story, but it you're going to end up, you always hear this thing about how you become your parents. I mean, it's totally true. Um, but that's how I grew up. And I don't really fault him because his father died when he was young. He was probably like 10 or 11 years old. So he never had that role model. It was just
Mm.
him and he didn't know any better. So, and I get it. And I've fallen into that before too. I mean, this sounds like I'm the greatest dad in the world. I'm not. I was a horrible dad and I'm constantly working on it. But I found that too, like, hey, I'm the provider, that's my job here, and that's it,
Mhm.
and that is totally not it. But I think that's the role that he fell into. And we didn't do, like, I can remember like throwing a football around with him like one time. We
Mhm.
just didn't do things. I probably count on one hand like how many family vacations we went on. um so it's those things that have like shaped the way that I parent. My wife and I both parent now, so that we're not like that, so that we are engaged with our kids and we know, what's going on in their lives and all that stuff. And so it's really, I don't want to be like that because I know how that was, growing up. And again,
Mhm.
like, it's not his fault. He didn't know any better either, but I don't want to keep repeating that cycle, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Everyone's doing the best that they can at the level of development that they have.
Yep, absolutely.
And it's funny that you mentioned because it's something clicked for me is like, yeah, like we don't like, yeah, we're often like, I'm not going to be like my parents. I'm going to do things differently. And then down the road, you just hear your kid or you hear someone say, like, you're just like your parent. And I'm like, how?
Yeah,
How did
yeah,
that happen? How did it?
yeah.
It's like, yeah, like the intention is not to do it, but sometimes the only actions we know are how we grew up and like, all
That's
right,
how
well,
you grew up. Yeah,
we
yeah,
grew up pretty good, so let's do the same. Like, oh, wait, this is what my parents did, and it's just a disconnect.
yeah,
And it's crazy that you mentioned about your dad, about your grandfather, because what I have noticed is that a lot of men, um, and that's why I think something like this is so powerful. Just hearing your experience and just that's why I'm so grateful for men like you, just
yeah.
telling their experiences,
Right.
is because there are a lot of men who just don't know what it's like to be a dad.
Yeah,
They either didn't have a father figure around or the only ones that they knew are the only ones that they knew. And
yeah,
that's the only advice that they have. So I
yeah.
think the beauty of this and the world that we live in where we're so connected, we could hear more of this.
Oh, absolutely,
So
absolutely.
very grateful for this, man. And well,
Yeah.
I will ask the question because I was gonna ask that after this. But
Okay.
I am curious, is there anything that you're doing the same that again, maybe it's your mom or your dad, that they did with you and your siblings that you are doing with your kids?
Um, I mean, that's what you do. You use what you think worked for you, and you kind of get rid of what you don't think worked. So, one thing that we do, and it's hard to do a lot of times, because our kids, they're both teenagers, they're both doing things, so we're all over the place. But one thing that my family always did is we always ate dinner together, like at the dinner table. And that's what we try to do at our house too. It's that time where everybody's together, everybody's talking about their day, what they're going through. There's no phones, there's no TV on, there's nothing. It's just us. Even if it's only for like half an hour during dinner, but at least we're connecting, like, hopefully every day we're trying to do that. But we're getting that connection with each other. That's always like your home base. You're always able to come back to that, and we always did that growing up. Yeah, I had two sisters, and we always did that. So and my wife's the same way. So that's something that we really value as a family, is having that time every day together at dinner.
I love that.
Yeah.
And well, here's another question that I was going to ask that you beat me, that you
Okay.
kind of beat me to it, but it's like, if you were to go back in time, what would you do differently?
Like raising me, or no, with our
You as a
kids?
dad. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I don't think you could change
I
how
would
you.
have been, yeah, that's easy. I mean, I would have said no to work more often. I'm very fortunate in that, I mean, my job's busy. My wife is busy too. She works, but my wife she's just a rock star. I mean, she has done I'll admit it. I mean, she's done the majority of raising our kids. She spent the most time with them, when I was off, like, doing work and being busy. And I took that for granted a lot of times. Like, I'm just starting to learn now, like, not to do that. But I took that for granted because she did such a good job of handling everything that I didn't really have to think about it, you know.
Mhm.
And like I said, I took it for granted. And, instead of like taking an active role a lot of times. So there'd be times when I thought I was like, helping out. And I would actually say that, oh, I want to help you do this, or I'm going to help you out and do this. I'm not supposed to be helping. It's not like her job to take care of the house, and everything. And me, like, doing dishes one time or something, and helping her, that's not my responsibility. It's not to help. It's supposed to do. It's also my job. You know what I mean?
Mm.
So if there's anything that I would change, it would be that, I would have been more like engaged, and less work. But I fell into the same thing as what my dad did, as being the breadwinner in the house, the main source of income. So I figured that, and it might be a guy thing, I'm sure it is, but you're thinking, okay, well, that's how I'm supporting the family. I'm out making the money, but it's not
Mhm.
about money. The time and the engagement is way more valuable than the money that you're earning, because that's how I'd
Mhm.
always justify it. There'd be, I'd work overtime. So I'd work overtime and take away, time from the family, but I'm like, hey, but I'm making this extra money for the family. When in reality, yeah, you are. But that, like I said, that time with them is more valuable than that extra, money that I was making at the time.
A
So that's
coach that
definitely
I No, I love that. And a coach that I spoke to was like, "Are you working overtime to pay to go to Disney World when your kid never asked you for that?
right. Yeah.
All they wanted was, no, I'd rather you be here. We'll figure out
Yeah.
Disney World in the future."
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I get it. You want to provide for your kids. You do all this stuff because you think that that's what they want. Like, just like you said, you think they want to go to Disneyland. They don't. They'd be just as happy like going for a walk with you. you know
Yeah.
it's that time, more than anything, more than the flashy thing, you know for sure.
What is your proudest moment so far as a dad?
Oh man, there's really not one. I can't think of like one proud moment. I mean, like I said, they're growing. I'm sure I'm gonna have a lot of proud moments coming up, but
Mhm.
just seeing them in general, like growing into the people that they are. I mean, my wife and I will have to step back every once in a while. It's rare, but we'll be able to step back, and like, our kids are good. They're good people, you know. Like, we didn't raise like bad human beings, which is, I mean, talk about a proud moment, when you're like, we did that. This person they're a great person. They have friends, they have people that love them, they love people, they're engaged, they're contributing. And we're excited to see what they're going to continue to contribute to the world. My daughter, like, after that whole protesting incident, we were like, you know what, this girl's going to be like president of the United States sometimes. We just, we know that, they're both going to do great things. And like I said, I mean, I know we're going to have a lot of proud moments ahead of us. So, I can't really have one thing in particular. There's so many, but it just in general, just raising good human beings like makes you proud.
I love that. And I actually something came up for me is, so what is your relationship with your daughter now? Is it like we're great? Or would you say
Yeah.
it's a little strained, or like, what would you say?
No, we're good. It's really crazy. So my wife and my son are like alike. And then my daughter and I are exactly alike. It's
Okay.
opposite. It's so weird. It's so weird. And I'm sure like other parents feel that they identify with one kid more than another. I mean, you love them both, obviously, but she's a gymnast, so she's an athlete. Our sense of humor is the same. Our interests are the same. It's crazy. Like I have to work a lot of times to make sure that I'm giving him the same amount of attention, so he doesn't feel like he's not, because he and I know that we're not the same people, which isn't a bad thing. It's good to have differences. But my daughter and we're different. Like we don't even have to like talk a lot of times. Like we'll know exactly, what the other one's thinking. And my wife hates it. She hates it. It's like there's two of me.
That is so funny.
Yeah.
Because like to me, it's like we see it with friends, we see it with coworkers, we see it sometimes even in family, even again, parents and their kids. Like when you guys have different views on things, that's where so much anger, so much separation, like even past, like I'm more passionate about being right than
Yeah.
like again, it's that ladder of importance. What's more important, you being right, or
Yeah.
you
Well,
having
look
good
at look at
relationships
the
with your
last couple of years with COVID, man. It's like driven families apart, like
yeah.
politics, and it's been horrible. Absolutely horrible.
And no, and I love what you said, like look, like she's got her views and we respect her views, and we honor those views, and at
You
the
have
same
to.
time too, like we keep her safe, like
Right.
we're
Yeah.
looking
Because
at it
that
from a
you're
parental
yeah, you're
standpoint.
you're still a parent. That's the thing. Like you have to be a parent, you want to be friends with them and everything, but at the end of the
Mhm.
day, you're their parent. You're responsible for raising them. As a police officer, like I've seen it all the time. Like you always have that cool parent that
Mhm.
you end up going to their house because in the middle of the night because they allowed their kids to have a party, because they're the cool parent. So all the kids are over there, they're all drinking, they're all doing whatever, and they're the cool parent. And we're not the cool parents. We're we're the parents. So yeah, I learned from other people's mistakes over the years.
Mm. I love that. And it's like, do you have any tips for dads who are, maybe they have conflicting views with their kids on certain issues? What advice do you have for them?
Yeah, just you have to respect them. I mean, they're their own person. As much as you want them to be a little mini you and you know, put your views and your opinions on them, they are their own person and you have to respect it, and if you don't, you're going to hurt that relationship. They're not going to want to engage with you, or they're not going to want to express themselves because they know that you don't feel the same way. And you're going to ultimately miss out on a lot of time with them, a lot of time and engagement with that son or daughter of yours.
Mm,
Yeah. Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
What advice do you have for dads who are police officers? What advice do you have for them?
Yeah. So family first, man. That's all I got to say. Family first. I'm sure I'm not the only one that made that mistake of putting work first. I get it. The people that tend to be police officers, we serve people. We want to help people. And a lot of times, and my wife has told me before, and even in my personal training business, like I seem to go out of my way for others more than I do for the family sometimes. And so the best advice is
Mm,
put your own family first, because what happens is when you're probably in any job, but especially as a police officer, you're like, hey, I'm helping these people, I'm working to provide for the family, and my family will understand. They'll get over it, basically. They're always going to be there for me. They'll get over it. But you do that enough, and there's going to be some hard feelings for a long time. So it's really not worth it. So, like I said before, like every time you say yes to work, you're saying no to your family. You just,
Mm,
there's gotta be a balance in there. There's gotta be.
I
Yeah.
love that.
Yeah.
And for the dads out there who maybe, they don't live in the same house with their kids. Maybe they don't even live in the same state or city or even
Yeah.
country. What is some advice that you have for them?
Yeah. People like that, that don't see their kids very often, they probably understand it, more than a dad that's there all the time. I can see if you're there all the time, you just kind of take it for granted.
Mhm.
Whereas if a dad's not there all the time, I mean, their time with their child is limited, so they're going to make, I would hope that they're going to make, better use of it. They're probably better fathers than fathers that are there every single day, because they probably understand like the value of having that time. For one, they schedule it probably. So they've already got that time set aside, and they planned for it. They know what they're going to do. Whereas if you're just there every day, like you don't put that much thought into it because you're just there. So those dads are probably having better engagement, even though they're not physically there every day, you know?
Nice. And
Yeah.
actually, there's a question that came to mind that I'm curious on your opinion is sometimes we tend to think like a question that I often see is like, what's the point of dad being there? And when I've spoken to people about this mission of like helping people, create a great relationship with their kids,
Yeah.
usually what comes up too is like, oh man, like my relationship with my dad was not great. And
Right.
it's like, okay, so like the question of like, what's the point of dad being there kind of shows that he is important because there are so everyone that I've mentioned this to, like they want a good relationship with their dad.
Right.
So what do you feel in your experience in your not only as a parent but also as a son, like what do you feel the role of dad is compared to the role of mom?
Oh man, that's tough. I would say, I mean, it's both the parent's responsibility, obviously, um, and I think roles have changed over the years. Like some families don't even have a mom and a dad. They're mixed or whatever. But whatever configuration they are, like having, like, let's say it's a dad. I mean, the mom and dad are they should be like sharing responsibility. When I was raised and the way that I grew up, like my mom was a stay-at-home mom and my dad was the breadwinner. He went to work in this, at GM every day, you know, probably more like an old school, like traditional role. And we always felt like closer to my mom. Like we could talk to her, she was emotional. And then my dad was just like stoic, we weren't very connected to him. Um, so it's important, I think, to have that dad there, especially for a son, because like I said before, like they're your role model, you know, to teach you the kind of dad that you want to be when you have your own kid. If you don't have that there, then you're just kind of trying to, wing it and try to figure it out as you go, I guess. I don't even know what that would look like. I can't imagine that. I mean, I was fortunate to at least have a dad there, that would give me some kind of idea of what I wanted to be, or like I said before, like what I didn't want to do, when I became a dad myself. Um, so yeah, I mean, that's a tough question though. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm curious, maybe do a poll on like I'm very curious what people's opinions are about that. Because I think
Yeah.
there's an idea like mom can do like mom is some people is like, yeah, my mom is my mom and dad. And
Everything.
I'm like,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's like, okay, but like I still have a void for dad. It's like
Yeah.
very
Yeah. It's
interesting.
almost that what if, like, people that didn't get raised with a dad or something, they're probably always thinking like, what if I did, how would my life have been different? Was I missing out on something? And
Mm,
just not knowing. And then how many times, you see people that they didn't have that influence in their life, and they are looking for it, the whole rest of their life, because it's a missing piece, and they don't even realize, what they're missing. So they're constantly looking for it. I mean, you think about like, all these men and women that have been in these relationships, and all they are them trying to find that kind of like authority figure in their life, you know,
mhm, mm.
just to try to fill that void,
Yeah, and I think it's also like having that balance of like, look, man, I got my mom, but I need a
Right.
masculine figure in my life. I need a father
Right.
figure. I need something to balance it out.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
for the new dad on the block, maybe he's expecting, or maybe he's a couple weeks, couple months in. What is some advice that you have for him?
Share the work, first of all. It's not your wife or your girlfriend's responsibility to raise the kid. So really just share the work. Um, your significant other is going to appreciate that, obviously. And then that child that you're raising is going to see that you're sharing responsibility, that you're taking an active role. Yeah, that's the biggest thing, man. Just be there. Um, engage. Don't take any of those moments for granted, like anything. And just be in the moment, appreciate all of it, because it just goes so fast. It
Mm,
goes so fast. Those years that I spent like working overtime and just busting my butt, like working, like I'll never get those back. They're gone. And with my son now, I mean, he's 17. He'll probably be out of the house here in another couple years, and that's it. So he just started driving like a year or so ago. And since he started driving, he's gone, man. And he's he's never home. And you just don't get it back. You just don't. It goes back to what you're saying before about, the thing that the dads always come back to is having that time. And it's true. I mean, it just is. I mean, that's the one thing you can't get back, you know.
And so this one isn't for me. This isn't for any other dad out there.
Yeah.
This is for two people in particular.
Okay.
What is something that you want to tell Xander and Ava?
Mhm. I always do. I mean, I always tell them that I love them, that I'm proud of them. I mean, that's nothing that we ever hold back from them. You know, we always tell them that, like, no matter what, even if they're in trouble or something or have done something, we always let them know that we're proud of them and that we love them. At the end of the day, we always want them to feel that they have that from us, just unconditional love. You know, I mean, that's the most important thing that you can give your kid.
Mike, thank you so much for being on here, man. I really appreciate your time and
Hey man,
your
it's a pleasure.
wisdom,
It's a
and it's a
pleasure.
gift.
Yeah. Hope I can help people out.
Definitely, man. Thank you.